And let's talk about the Colts and the Browns, okay? The Browns, the Cleveland Browns are 4-1. What a world are we in? Where's my thing at? There we go. The Browns improved to 4-1, defeating the Colts by a final score of 32-23. Phillip Rivers and the Colts continue to struggle in the passing game. 21 of 33 for 243 yards and 2 interceptions. Jonathan Taylor, 12 carries, 57 yards, and a touchdown. T.Y. Hilton, welcome back from the dead, my man. Appreciate you coming around for the 2020 NFL season. Welcome aboard, just a few weeks late. 10 targets, 6 receptions for 69 yards. Jonathan Taylor, another top 15 running back finish. I'll talk about him in just a moment. On the other side with the Browns and Baker Mayfield, who was dinged up in this game with a rib injury, played through it. X-rays came back, were negative. Mayfield, 21 of 37 for 247 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Kareem Hunt without Nick Chubb, again, top 5 running back, bar none. 20 carries, 93 total yards, and a touchdown. And Jarvis Landry had a pretty good game as well. Of course, the week after I say that I'm really concerned about Landry, he comes through and plays decently well for you if you had to start him, hauling in 4 of 9 targets for 88 yards. Austin Hooper, I want to talk about him. 17 targets the past 2 games after dudding essentially for the first 3 weeks of the season. He's really come on strong as the year has progressed, and it looks like that there is budding chemistry between Baker Mayfield and Hooper. But again, one of the things that we really look for at the tight end position is volume, and if he is going to see a consistent target share now at this point, between 7 targets in week 4 and 10 this week versus the Colts, that's volume that you can probably count on going forward. So I'm really excited for Hooper in that way. I want to see if it's going to keep up as the year progresses. All right, let's go back to camera here. I'm going to talk about Jonathan Taylor first, because I really don't have a whole lot to say about the Colts' other offensive pieces here. I don't know if it's just what I'm seeing, but I've continuously seen people panic about Jonathan Taylor, right? When Marlon Mack went down, the anticipation was Jonathan Taylor's a top 5 running back. Like, this is it, right? And maybe, admittedly, that was a bit too ambitious, right? But Jonathan Taylor still seeing 50% of snaps because of Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins. He's still getting it done. And I'm going to have to say this probably every week now going forward. I know I've talked about this before in the past as well. Again, this is a floor game for Jonathan Taylor of 12 carries, 57 yards, 2 receptions for 17 yards, and a touchdown. This is a floor game for Jonathan Taylor. I'm gonna say this again. A floor game for Jonathan Taylor. He finished this week again as a top 15 running back. He is running back 13 on the year, and he has not had a boom game yet. He's had maybe one versus Minnesota where he scored 18 points. But outside of that, it's been a consistent 12 points a week. And that's fine. That is fine for a guy that you drafted in that 4th, 5th round this season. And he's obviously a rookie, and he's only going to get better as the year progresses. But if you're a Jonathan Taylor owner, I don't know how you can be anything other than happy. You just have such a consistent option where you know you'll end up getting 64 yards, fall into the end zone once, and you'll be fine. You'll be set with a 12-point game every single week, right? I'm really excited just about Taylor going forward on the year, and I actually think he fits in the same category as Clyde Edwards-Helaire of just 2 running backs where the expectations were so high. And even though they aren't at their expectations, they're maybe a step and a half below, which means you are able to try and get Jonathan Taylor or Clyde Edwards-Helaire for cheap. I want to talk about Clyde in just a little bit when we talk about the Chiefs and the Raiders. But you're just in a position where I try and make an offer for Jonathan Taylor and Clyde Edwards-Helaire almost immediately. These are 2 guys who are playing at their floor right now, and their ceiling and their potential haven't even been touched, or we haven't even scratched the surface of them. Moving over to the rest of the Colts, Phillip Rivers, you're done. You weren't starting him anyway, hopefully. You should officially be done after this. They just don't look good. They don't move the ball consistently, and if they do, it's just little baby plays. It's nothing big. Rivers had a few really bad interceptions and just bad throws in general in this game. It's nice to see T.Y. Hilton come back and have a fine performance, but I still don't think you're excited to start him, or you're really even willing to start him going forward. 10 targets, though, like, that's really hard to scoff at. That's easily the most on the year. He actually had 9 targets in Week 1 versus Jacksonville, but it's been 5-5-5 ever since then. I'm still off T.Y. for now. I just don't trust it. I just don't trust it, and as we approach this bye week season and the COVID season and just the reshuffling of games here, flexibility is important. So if you need to play T.Y., you can at any given point, but just understanding where he falls in terms of your wide receivers, right? So, for example, if you have Robert Woods, Allen Robinson, and T.Y. Hilton, you need to order those guys in a way that makes sense. Kind of like how we do tiering in the pre-draft process. You know, like your tier of running backs, your second tier, your third, like, right? You need to do that with your roster, and you need to look at who are my top tier wide receivers, who's my second tier. I consider those guys as replacements, so like for bye weeks, right? Let's just say for Robert Woods, you're starting him every single week. Well, when Robert Woods is on a bye, who am I playing in place of him? So just things like that and really understanding the landscape of your roster and what is the situation of when you're actually going to play T.Y. Hilton. I started Mo Cox this week because I had to. I wasn't comfortable starting Hayden Hurst, and I had Robert Tonyan last week, who was on a bye this week with the Packers. So I had to start Mo Cox, and Mo Cox put up a 0. Trey Burton was heavily involved, but he did nothing, and Jack Doyle was non-existent. Just please stay away from the Colts outside of Jonathan Taylor and Ricardo Blankenship, who proves again to be one of the best kickers in the NFL. The rookie, the goggles, the safety goggles. He's the number 2 kicker on the year. He's balling out, and this is what I look for in kickers. I know I don't talk about kickers hardly at all on this channel or on this show. But the thing I always look at for kickers is give me offenses that are good enough to move the ball but aren't good enough to score. And that is the Indianapolis Colts in a nutshell. It's the Jacksonville Jaguars in a nutshell. It's, what's another team? It is the San Francisco 49ers in a nutshell. And that one's obviously a little bit different because they do have some star players with Mostert and Kittle and things like that. But like that is a team that is going to consistently move the ball to the 30 or 35-yard line, maybe not be able to punch it in, and then they settle for field goals, and that's where you're going to rack up all their points. Michael Badgley of the Chargers is a great candidate. He's one of my kickers for that reason. So Blankenship and Jonathan Taylor for the Colts moving forward. Going over to the Browns, not a whole lot that I want to talk about in this game. Mayfield was fine. Again, you're never really going to start him. He just doesn't have that ceiling to where he's going to explode on any given week, and even then his floor is pretty low as well because of the fact this team is so run heavy. Kareem Hunt, speaking of, balled out, coming in with 16.8 fantasy points in half-point formats. You would love to see that number be a bit higher, admittedly, but they did have some other players involved. Dearness Johnson came in, got 8 carries, also had a target in the receiving game as well. I'm fine with Kareem Hunt. Don't panic. Again, 16.8 fantasy points in Week 1 without Chubb. Just keep starting him, keep the train moving, and you'll be all right. With Landry, it's actually this was actually really interesting trying to decide who I wanted to put in the box score of this game because Jarvis Landry was involved. He had 10 plus fantasy points. Rashad Higgins, who whenever Rashad Higgins is on the field and actually gets work, he's always been a guy who just produces, and he's more so a great football. He's a better football player than a fantasy player, and you never know when the Rashad Higgins games are actually going to come. But he's a guy who absolutely deserves more playing time because every time he is on the field, he is spectacular. He comes in with 10 plus fantasy points, and Odell comes in with 9.1. And this is just this is just the Odell Beckham experience. And I told you to start Odell. I did. So that's on me. I bought the dip and I bought the hype after the Cowboys game. But again, 9 targets, hauls in 5 of them for 58 yards. The targets. The volume is there, just the production isn't. And what can you do at that point? And I guess the question for me is if Odell Beckham isn't a weekly start, then what is he? Is he a dart throw? Is he a swing for the fence? Is he just a supplement? Is he matchup dependent? Right, there's a lot of questions here surrounding Odell and what he actually is and what he can be for fantasy. And so, for example, like next week versus Pittsburgh, do you play Odell in that matchup? Because we've now seen games versus good defenses with Baltimore, Washington, and Indianapolis now, where he's had under 10 fantasy points in those contents. And then the games versus really bad defenses being Cincinnati and Dallas, he's put up double digits, 15 plus in both those matchups. So if it's next week versus Pittsburgh, I don't think you can play Odell. And I think that's just kind of the route that we take is Odell Beckham is now matchup dependent if he's in your lineup or if he isn't. We talked about Austin Hooper already. That was a great catch. We talked about Austin Hooper already. 5 receptions, 10 targets. Just being more and more involved in this passing game, and that's great for him. And it's also great for the tight end landscape, which is currently bleeding at all levels and at all places right now. So to just have another guy who can serve some sort of relevant role, that has to be intriguing and exciting for somebody going forward. If you are the Zach Ertz owner, if you are the Hayden Hurst owner, if you are the Tyler Higbee owner, which are all players who have basically just gone from here to here in just a matter of a few weeks.